can't move.
It's the Gorn.
Hey everyone, and welcome to What Did I Miss?, where today I'll be breaking down the 4th episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, titled Memento Mori. This new series continues to tell good stories by not only incorporating familiar Star Trek tropes into their episodes, but also tackling the different genres that episodic television series delve into. In this case, a claustrophobic horror story. One thing that I don't think Star Trek as a franchise gets enough credit for is creating scary episodes for their respective crews, when in fact, Star Trek has produced some of the scariest and suspenseful science fiction I've ever watched. This episode of Strange New Worlds reintroduced a classic yet still mysterious foe as a menacing and almost supernatural force, and created a horrific situation for the audience to witness without ever revealing what a member of the alien race looks like. With callbacks to other classic horror stories like Jaws, Aliens, and Poltergeist, this episode really was a treat for any and all fans of the genre, and I'll go over every single reference and Easter egg that I saw here. Before I do, I want to thank you for clicking on this video and ask that if you do enjoy it, to please remember to hit that like button and the subscribe button to help support the channel. The episode titled Memento Mori is a Latin phrase that translates to memory of death, which is definitely in line with the horror tone of the episode, as it sounds like it could be the title of a classic black and white horror movie. This is also the 15th time that Star Trek has used a Latin phrase as a title for an episode, with some examples being the recent 2-part Star Trek Discovery episode Terra Firma, the Next Generation episode Sub Rosa, and the Lower Decks episode Veritas. This episode begins with the crew commemorating Starfleet Remembrance Day, which is a day in which officers take time to remember fellow officers that have been lost, as well as the ships that they have served on with tribute pins. These pins were actually on display at the Star Trek Mission Chicago Fan Convention in 2022 and were one of the cooler props that I saw there. La'an recalls that she was a crew member on the SS Puget Sound, a colony ship that lost all hands but La'an to the Gorn. Other officers are also wearing pins, and the only two that I could get the ship's names off of were the pins worn by Spock and Captain Pike. Spock is wearing a pin for the USS Congo, and Captain Pike is wearing a pin for the USS Antares. Although I could not read it, I would imagine that Una is wearing a pin for the USS Martin Luther King Jr., as it was revealed earlier this season that that was the name of the ship that she served on when she rescued La'an. In a sad bit of irony, during Captain Pike's speech about Remembrance Day, Transporter Chief Kyle smiles at a crewman in a blue uniform who later sacrifices his life to save Kyle during the battle with the Gorn. La'an arrives on the bridge and meets Una, who notices that she is not wearing her pin.
Who? Who doesn't want to wear the ribbon?
Una mentions to La'an that Starfleet has resources available to her if she needs closure. It is important to point out that at this point in Starfleet's history, there are no ship's counselors on board Federation vessels, such as Deanna Troi on the Next Generation. Showing the emotional trauma that Starfleet officers face underscores the need for mental health professionals on Federation ships in later years. La'an tells Una that she doesn't want someone in her head to fix her, which is foreshadowing a scene later in the episode in which she allows Spock to literally enter her mind to remember a repressed traumatic event. After arriving on the planet and getting no response from the colony there, an away team is dispatched to see what's going on. When they reach the colony, they find it deserted with signs that a firefight had taken place. This scene really reminded me of the second act of the classic sci-fi horror film Aliens, in which a group of space marines and civilians are dispatched to a colony on a distant planet that they have lost communications with. While the away team are searching for survivors, one of them is startled by a dog, another classic jump scare tactic used in horror films. Soon the Enterprise detects a ship in orbit and beams the away team back to the ship. The mysterious ship contacts them and reveals that they are the missing people from the planet, and they connect to the Enterprise so that they can be rescued. A small girl remembers hearing a clicking sound before a monster took her father away, and La'an recognizes that this is a sound that the Gorn made when she was a captive. The Gorn are a classic Star Trek villain, having first appeared in a memorable scene in the original series episode Arena. They have not been used for many years on Star Trek though, mostly due to the difficulty of creating a creature design for the reptilian alien race that was both believable and budget friendly. It wasn't until the series Star Trek Enterprise was able to use CGI technology to create a new design for the aliens for the episode In a Mirror Darkly that they were seen on screen again. However, in the Star Trek Online game, which I believe is considered canon, the Gorn are a major race and are shown to be aligned with the Klingon Empire. Both designs shown on screen for the Gorn have not really been well received by fans and are kind of considered a joke, which may be another reason why we did not see a Gorn in this episode. However, I believe one holdover from the design of the Gorn from the series Enterprise may be the clicking noise that La'an mentions remembering. The effects team on Star Trek Enterprise wanted the design of the Gorn to be similar to the Velociraptor dinosaur, which had become very popular thanks to the Jurassic Park franchise. Velociraptors were known for having large claws on their feet, which paleontologists believe they used to make clicking noises to communicate, similar to the ones that La'an remembers the Gorn making. A Gorn vessel attacks the Enterprise while it is unable to raise its shields and destroys the connected ship. I thought that La'an had a very Carrie Ann moment when she realized that the attacking ship is the Gorn. La'an gets back to the bridge and stops the captain from engaging the Gorn and instead recommends a retreat. Pike instructs Spock and Ortegas to figure out a way into a nearby brown dwarf. A brown dwarf is a stellar object that cannot sustain fusion like the Sun, but are larger than a regular gas giant planet like Jupiter. Hiding out in a stellar object is another classic maneuver used by different Star Trek captains, and in a bit of historical irony, this same tactic will be used on La'an's ancestor in the future. As in the film Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, Captain Kirk orders the Enterprise into an interstellar dust cloud known as the Mutara Nebula to evade Khan, Noonien Singh after a surprise attack. Also, in both cases, the captains of the Enterprise use their opponent's relentless nature against them in battle. During the battle, the main cargo bay is severely damaged and Hemmer is hurt. The air purifier that the Enterprise is bringing to the colony is also damaged, and if it explodes, it will destroy the ship. Hemmer is able to fix the purifier, but due to his injury, he is unable to, and must articulate the instructions to Cadet Uhura. Having an injured crewman instruct another crewman in a fish-out-of-water plot is another common trope used on Star Trek, and in fact, I just watched the Deep Space Nine episode Armageddon Game, in which a gravely ill Chief O'Brien must instruct young Dr. Bashir on how to repair a communications transmitter so that they can be rescued. You may have also noticed that Hemmer has blue blood, another trait that Aenar share with their Andorian relatives. The Enterprise then plays a cat-and-mouse game with the Gorn vessels after Spock devises a way for the ship to track them while in the brown dwarf. This really reminded me of the classic original series episode Balance of Terror, in which the Enterprise is attempting to locate a cloaked Romulan vessel. Both sequences play out like an old submarine movie, and Ortega seems to reference his likeness directly with this line.
Aye, aye, Skipper. Dive, dive, dive.
Also, the crew essentially turn a photon torpedo into a depth charge to use against the Gorn vessel, another callback to maritime combat. After destroying one ship and tricking another one of the Gorn ships into destroying itself, La'an and Spock take a shuttle so that they can locate the surviving vessels. When they find them, they see that the ships are emitting light patterns to each other in order to communicate. This is how fireflies communicate with each other, and since the design of the smaller Gorn ships do resemble fireflies with a glowing center, this may be a reference to that. La'an thinks that she remembers something about the lights during her encounter with the Gorn, but it has been repressed by trauma. Spock offers to perform a Vulcan mind meld with her, a practice that has been seen on Star Trek many times. What is interesting about this scene is that it may be a continuity error, or it may be a hint at a future plotline. I say this because in the original series episode Dagger of the Mind, Spock claims to have never performed a mind meld on a human before, which these events on Strange New Worlds would seem to contradict. If this is not an error, which I do not believe it is, this could be a hint that later on, we will find out that La'an is not a human being and is something else. Something strange, forgive the pun, must happen with her character eventually if we are to believe that when the crew of the Enterprise encounter her ancestor Khan in just over 5 years, they barely have an idea of who he is. So much like retconning Michael Burnham as Spock's sister by having her lost to him during a classified mission, I think that eventually we are going to get a big story centered on La'an and why she is not remembered on Kirk's Enterprise. Within her mind meld vision, La'an sees her brother as he gives her a translation of the flashing lights. It looks like the Gorn's form of communication is similar to that of Morse code, another callback to maritime tactics, as Morse code is a method used by naval fleets to encode text characters as standardized sequences represented by dots and dashes, oftentimes by using flashing light. Within the mind meld, La'an is able to see in Spock's mind and learn of his sister Michael Burnham. While I'm sure that Spock would rather not have shared this with La'an, remembering the sacrifice of his sister helps him solve a problem later in the episode. La'an is able to trick the larger Gorn ship into firing onto the smaller one, destroying it, and seems pretty happy that she was able to. It's almost like some of the ultra-violent Noonien Singh bloodline is starting to emerge from her, and in fact, you can briefly hear Khan's theme music after the Gorn ship is destroyed. Uhura and Hemmer continue to work together to stop the air purifier from exploding, but seem to hit a dead end. Hemmer reveals that as an Aenar, he is a pacifist, and this is consistent with the species' first appearance on the Enterprise episode United. While they do share many characteristics with Andorians, pacifism is one trait that is not shared, as Andorians are known to be very combative. The captain decides to use the black hole in order to trick the Gorn into believing that the ship has been destroyed. Before doing this, Ortega states that if the plan works, that it should be called the Pike Maneuver. Starfleet captains have been known to have their actions in battle immortalized by name, as Captain Picard and eventually Captain Riker also have maneuvers named after them. The maneuver works, and after the Gorn believe that the Enterprise has been destroyed, they leave the area. While Pike remains optimistic that they will be more ready the next time they face the Gorn, La'an remains vigilant. This reminded me of the end of the Next Generation episode Q-Who, which introduced the Enterprise to the Borg, and the realization that Captain Picard felt after escaping their first encounter with the frightening species.
They will be coming.
You can bet on it.
Well, that was everything I saw, but let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please smash that like button if you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time on What Did I Miss?